Welcome to A Way Forward, the podcast where I sit down and have real discussions about the challenges we face in our cities, communities, and neighborhoods. The goal of this podcast is to create a space that includes expert interviews, guests with lived experiences, and voices not often heard. I'm your host, retired Police Chief Daniel Hahn, and I will bring my experience in law enforcement, community, and education to each conversation so that together we can build a way forward. All right, I have David Garibaldi as our guest today in A Way Forward, and I don't want to do any of the your background because I'd love for you to do it. So I know you had love to hear your upbringing and like what was going on as a kid, and then we'll get into some of the other stuff, how you kind of got to where you're at now.
Yeah. Well, first, thank you for having me. This is an honor. I was born in LA, but I grew up in Sacramento. Mm-hmm. So my dad had moved here moved us here when I was young for work. He worked for Blue Diamond Almonds. And so at the time, South Sacramento was sort of already established, and there were some newer suburbs, which is now called Vintage Park. Mm-hmm. That's where we moved into Vintage Park. And, that was my introduction to Sacramento, and then going into South Sac essentially to do everything that we needed, because that's all that there was, like Florin Mall.
Right.
But
yeah, Vintage Park was kind of out there.
Yeah, Vintage Park was crazy to think that was out there. And, over time, Elk Grove as well was where I grew up. But I was always a creative kid. Like, art was always a foundation of everything that I did.
For as long as you can remember.
I could not remember not drawing or that being a passion of mine. I mean, even watching, one of my favorite films of all time is Fantasia, the Disney Fantasia, which is the mixture of color and sound.
Right.
And I didn't realize what big role that would play later on. But, even though art was a foundation, my parents, thank God, I thank him for this, they put me in music classes. So I was going to the school where they offered music lessons, and I picked the trumpet. So I started learning how to play the trumpet, read music, but it was also giving me an appreciation for like classical music and jazz. So, I would say early on, looking back on it now, there were these things that were popping up that ultimately became this collision of passions that kind of set me up later on. But, I was just always young and creative and drawing, making music. And then eventually, I got into hip hop and hip hop culture. And with that, if you're a creative, you get into graffiti, which was, I thought was a pretty fun
graffiti,
art form.
You mean out in the neighborhood graffiti?
Absolutely. Yeah. Like the illegal graffiti.
Yeah.
Out on walls, trains, anywhere in public.
So how old when you started doing that, how old were you?
Oh, I was 7th grade.
Oh,
so
okay.
13,
Before high school.
13 years old. Yeah. Middle school, I started.
Was this a daily thing, or like how big in your life was this?
My gateway to graffiti was just drawing. It was getting access to the internet somehow. And I found this website called Art Is Not a Crime. And I started seeing this. And when you just see something in life, you don't know why you connect with it. You're just like, this is speaking to me. And artisnotacrime.com was my gateway to this hip hop art world. And the way the letters moved and the way it felt like music frozen in time, it spoke to me. Now, I didn't really realize what came along with that culture, which is getting up in the city on things that you don't own.
Right.
But that didn't stop me from trying to figure it out. And
when you did the graffiti, would it be words or paintings or like, or a bunch of different kind of, what was your like inspiration, or what would you put?
Well, in graffiti, you sort of either pick a name or something that you're known by,
tag,
so like your alias, yeah. So I picked one, and it was inspired by Star Wars because I was still a nerd at the time, still am, and I just started writing that. Even when I started doing graffiti early on, I knew tagging was part of it, but that's not really what I wanted to do. I wanted to use aerosol cans to make art.
Art, yeah.
inspired by hip hop culture. And I made these friends doing graffiti, and we would go to these Zulu Nation events at Sac State. The coolest thing about that was I really got to learn about the culture of hip hop, not just rap music, not just doing graffiti, but the culture that encompasses this expression in this time that we were living in. You know, this music that came from New York but spread to the world. And at the time, Zulu Nation in Sacramento was like a sort of like a cultural educator through live events. Mm-hmm. So I would watch break dancers and meet graffiti artists at these events. And it wasn't just about the tagging. It was really about, I am part of a culture. Mm-hmm. This is my family. And not that I was looking for a family, it's just, They seem like a cool family.
So how did you, like the art that you'd put out in the community as graffiti or tagging or whatever, how did you learn how to, were you self-taught in how to get good at that? Or like, how did you learn how to, because if I tried to take a spray can to a wall right now, it wouldn't look very good.
I don't know. Have you tried?
No, I haven't.
don't know this.
But I don't think I could. I've seen you, and I could not do what you do.
All right, we'll go hit Old Sac after this. Right. No, I had a little bit of an advantage because I was really good at drawing already. Mm-hmm. I already had an eye for looking at something, recreating it, adding my own style to it. So I started to do that with letters, and I would go on this graffiti website. This is early internet, you know, this is like late 90s. So it took a while to load, but I would find stuff and I'd try to recreate it. And I'm like, oh, I like this style. And they were like these 3-dimensional letters. It wasn't just tags.
Right.
I also did the tags, but it was like, I don't know, it was just letters moving frozen in time. That's how it felt to me. So my advantage was being an artist, and I loved it, and I was really good at it.
So you sought all that out and self-taught with the assistance of the internet, not like you went to art camp or a training program for art, some formal thing. You kind of knew what your passion was, and you went after it.
Yeah, I was very self-motivated into any of my passions at a young age, and I credit my parents for that because my mom's been a hairstylist for her whole life. My dad has always been in the same industry at a high level. He's in the food manufacturing industry. And he even had his own business for a long time. And so I saw my parents just figuring it out. You want to do that? Go figure it out.
As opposed to, son, art, that ain't going to pay the bills, son. You need to be an engineer or something like that.
I mean, I watched my parents follow their passions. So I'm like, oh, so am I. I'm supposed to do that. Let's go do it.
So at some point you get to Sheldon High School, and I for lack of a better word, the traditional way students typically go, transition from middle school to high school, graduate after 4 years, and move on to college or trade school or military or something like that. That wasn't your path. So how come high school, the traditional path, didn't work out for you?
You know, when I started going to Sheldon, I was very passionate about art, but I was not passionate about biology or history or English. Not to say they're not important subjects. I just wasn't passionate about it. So, and I would say the mixture of, also my parents were encouraging, but they weren't on me about my homework as much as well. So, I mean, that did play a factor, and I don't blame them for that. They're busy. They're trying to provide for us. But that combination of, look, I'm not passionate about these subjects that aren't art, and also I'm not being checked up on probably as much as I should have. That combination, resulted in failing classes my freshman and sophomore year. I mean, every class. I literally had F's and D's in almost every class besides art, which I think I had a B in. Oh. No, I had a B in art because I wasn't disciplined.
Right.
Because the thing is, what I know now, and I tell my kids is, look, you may not be passionate about the other subjects, but what you're going to learn in there is discipline, about having to do something that you may not enjoy, but you're going to learn how to do your best at that. Yeah. You can get a C by trying hard at something.
That's to me what college is. Just shows you can complete something.
Yeah. which I think that is a great exercise for humans to do that. But it didn't work out for me,
So how did high school end for you? Did you just stop going, or
No.
like how did that stop at that point?
So end of my sophomore year, I had a teacher that really knew I was in trouble. I was not on the right track. I was doing graffiti. I was showing up late to my first period. My grades were terrible. And she knew I was creative but lacked discipline. And so she had actually introduced me to Mr. Sullivan, who was the animation teacher at Sheldon High School. Now, animation was not a normal class at that time. It still isn't, which is crazy. But he
And
was...
by that, what do you mean? It's like an after-school thing, or?
Yeah, like it's either an after-school thing or it's something that you literally dream about. You're like, maybe you'll do it in college. But he was teaching this in high school. So they're like, what can you do with him? Now, when I met him, I realized why they brought me to him, because he looks like a football coach. He's like, 6'5" plus feet, and just intimidating figure. And he was encouraging. He was like, look, that's really cool. I don't want to change who you are. I just want to offer you another option. So I started going after school to this class. And then I had the opportunity my junior year to actually get into Animation 1. So as soon as that happened, I mean, everything changed. Everything shifted. The biggest shift for me taking the animation class was seeing that there were art careers for artists that weren't just design work, graphic design, which I wasn't into that, airbrushing t-shirts, or trying to make it as a painter. Like, God forbid. I remember looking at people painting when I was in high school, and I was like, I feel sorry for you. Man, that's going to be a really rough life. But knowing that there were more paths to careers in arts, media, and entertainment through animation, that changed my whole perspective about, now I can see a path, and I can kind of see beyond high school now, because at that point I really didn't.
So I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but you mentioned Mr. Sullivan. How do you think, if you never met Mr. Sullivan, if that teacher didn't take you to Mr. Sullivan, what impact would that have on your future, like where you're at now?
You mean
it
if I
seems
didn't-
like a seminal, like...
If I didn't meet Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
If I never met Mr. Sullivan, we wouldn't be sitting here right now.
That's what I kind of thought.
Yeah. And here's the crazy thing is this story didn't end well in high school. But, I had messed up so much my freshman, sophomore year that when it got to the end of high school, I couldn't graduate because I couldn't make up enough classes.
Right.
So he was disappointed. I was disappointed. My parents everyone was disappointed. So, but still meeting him and still having the knowledge of what's possible. Yeah, I couldn't go to the college, but I still there's still a path there. That was the encouragement that I needed to start the journey of figuring this out.
Speaking of that, when you're in middle school, high school, I mean, I think we get asked about it a lot. What do you want to be, son? Kid, whatever. So in your younger years, before you ever got on the journey that you're on now, what did you think you wanted to do as a living, to survive as an adult once you grew up?
I actually thought I was going to play the trumpet in a symphony, because I started playing the trumpet at a young age, and I knew that you can get a job as a musician playing in a symphony.
You thought that was what you were going to do?
I thought. And actually, when I got to high school, I was playing the trumpet all the way until high school, and then they said, you have to choose between the two. And I was like, well, I'm better at art for sure, so I'm going to start doing art. And that was part of it. But outside of that, I was probably going to cut hair, because that's what my mom did. And it was a family business. My stepdad did it, my uncle, my aunt, my cousins. I was going to cut hair for a living.
So I assume you're thankful you're not cutting hair and you're doing what you're doing now.
Absolutely, yeah. But I would have, here's the thing, God forbid I couldn't paint.
Right.
I would go cut hair. I think it's cool. Ironically, being bald.
So I know I've heard you speak a few times, and you've talked about, I don't know what we would call it, but run-ins with the police, or run from the police. I don't know what you would call it, but during your times where you're out in the neighborhood doing graffiti, talk a little bit about that experience and what eventually stopped that from happening?
Yeah. Well, naturally, when you're out doing graffiti, someone sees you, they call. And I think most of the times when we were being chased by the police, it was because the trains were going by where we were in Vintage Park. There's a train track that runs right by that neighborhood. And so they would go slow. We'd try to hide. And I think they may have called because they saw us doing that.
The engineer on the train.
The engineer, I would assume. Or someone heard us in their backyard. And so there's different outlets for the streets, and we would see them. We knew where all the places were to run. So we just see the car pull up, and we would just take off. There were close calls, and I share that sometimes when I'm on stage about, really, really close calls where I was this out of shape high school kid, and they're very fit police officers in Sacramento. So I think what got me thinking about, look, this can't keep going on, was the fear of going to jail, getting arrested. Like, I loved art. I don't love it that much. I didn't love it so much to lose prison. My freedom. Right. And it seemed cool at the time, but there was still something, in my heart that was like, this ain't it. You cannot keep, this is only going to end one way. Mm-hmm. And that was going to be arrested at some point. So I just knew it had to end.
So what do you think we as a community, society should be thinking about, like in your example in high school, about kids, maybe their art isn't their thing, but like school isn't working for them. They're the same way you are. Like biology is not working for me. I'm not doing my work. Yeah. Matter of fact, I'm not doing my work in any of my classes. Mm-hmm. And eventually I'm flunking out. How should we be thinking about kids that, for whatever reason, the traditional school is not working out? Because it seems to me like there were some influential people in high school for you that it didn't make the traditional path lead off, but they were the start of what became a success for you, even though it wasn't traditional graduation at high school. Yeah.
Well, history has shown us that the school system was created to make employees. People that are going to do similar, employees. People are going to do similar things. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that not everyone is built the same. But it's created so that everyone's supposed to get graded on this letter system, and then that determines your value as a student or person. So when you don't meet that, what are your other options? Before the internet, you didn't have a lot of options outside of that. Now we're able to see people apply more skill sets beyond a degree. Mm-hmm. Like, what are your soft skills? How do you build relationships with people? How do you lead a small group of people? Just 2 or 3, not even a large team. How do you respond to adversity? And all these soft skills that I've ultimately had to put to work owning a business now for 20 plus years as an artist, and even building a career. It's really all these things that were not taught to me in school, but were shown to me through the people that I interacted with. So I would say if I saw a student struggling in the class, not getting the letter grade, I would probably pair them up with a mentor that just can be a living example of, look, how do you speak to someone? How are we interacting with people? How are you responding to discipline? Like, just going beyond the information that they're being learned, which is still important, but also how are you going to respond to life outside of this high school? Right. I had that in Sullivan. He ran his classroom like a job. If you don't finish your work, you get fired. Not a D, not a C. You lose your opportunity to work with your team, the people that you've built this relationship with. My parents, my mom, watching my mom own a hair salon, if she didn't work and get along and build relationships with clients, people would leave. But she has clients that have come to her for decades now because she knows how to work and talk to people and figure out even things that may go wrong. So pairing a student up with a mentor that can show them, not just tell them what to do, but like come along with me for half a day. Like, let's pair students up with an entrepreneur and show them maybe running a business would interest them, or being part of a business would interest them. Just, not everyone's built the same, and not everyone's going to learn the same, but we still need to find solutions for students that can give them hope that their soft skills are as important as their knowledge.
It's always so amazing to me how many successful people say people is what changed. Like, relationships with somebody they trust and believes in them is what changed, not some technology or some special class, but another human being that they had a connection to that believed in them is what really changed. So last thing on high school, I just recently heard, as a matter of fact, that you actually recently, I don't remember how recent, but got your high school diploma. Now, this is after you are known throughout the world, really, and very successful, and yet you still went to Highlands to get your high school diploma. Impressive as it may be, well, I'm just curious why. Why was that important to you? You're successful. On the outside, I think people would think of that high school. What's that high school diploma going to do for you now?
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're past that stage. Why would you go back and have to do homework and all those things that you didn't like doing before?
Yeah, well, there were a couple of reasons why I got my high school diploma. The first one, the most important, was Mr. Sullivan. He had still been my mentor all throughout my career. I always checked in with him. We've become friends.
Right.
And we run a nonprofit together. And I just kept thinking about, man, he didn't have to show up for me the way that he did when I was in high school. He could have been like, no, you can't, I can't stay after school for you to finish your project. You got to figure it out. But he didn't do that. He would show up, put the extra time in. He never, at one point, made me feel like, look, dude, I'm just here to do my job. He always went the extra mile. And so I essentially wanted to keep my word at the end of this deal. And I remember going through the process. He's like, you don't need to do this. I was like, I know I don't need to.
He was telling you didn't need to.
Yeah, Sullivan was like, you don't need to do this. I said, I know. You also didn't need to show up for me the way that you did. So once I figured out I only had 25 credits to get, I'm like, that's how close I was? That's crazy. But even that 25 credits was so hard to do. You're right. I was in it. I am successful in my career.
Huge audiences.
I was doing my homework backstage at arena shows on an arena tour. I'm at Madison Square Garden
doing algebra,
doing homework. And it was still hard, but eventually when I got to the graduation, he was there, and I get kind of like choked up thinking about this, but there's a lot of, it's very rare moments in life that we get to pay it back to people while they're still here, while they can see it. And that was just my opportunity to do the work, keep my word, and finish the job and make him proud.
And that's probably 20 years later, right?
Yeah.
And he's still there.
Oh yeah, still there.
Shows up. And
thank God.
It brings out this kind of emotion.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's what's so critical, that people are important parts of a journey. And without them, who knows where you'd be right now. And
think about this, it's, as life goes on, there's less and less people that have known you for that long.
Right.
To see you transform, to see you from with like hopes and dreams to become that dream. He's one of them, along with my parents and my family and some friends. But that was when the other reason why I got my high school diploma was also I had just gone through one of the most difficult personal and eventually became a public thing that was out of my control. But I thought, okay, what in my life can I control? My health. I can control, how I raise my kids, and this other thing that I could find out how many credits I need and go do that. And I think it was partly like, look, I feel so vulnerable right now. I need something to create momentum in life. I need something to give purpose, meaning, and to let's move forward away from this situation.
So, thinking you're going to be a trumpet player in the symphony, to a hairstylist, to what you do a ton of things, and we'll get into some of those. But like, where I've seen you a lot, where I know a lot of people know you, is this amazing show you put on, performance art. Like, how did that happen? Because I don't know that I've ever seen somebody do it other than you.
Yeah.
So you're coming out of high school, you got Mr. Sullivan, you got your parents. Like, how did you even get into this whole arena of performance art that now you've done all over the place?
Yeah. Well, when you don't have a high school diploma and rent is due, you get creative. So I had never painted before, and I started painting live at these local clubs, like not too far from where we're recording this. And I would just show up. I would do these small paintings live. Well, at one of those nights, this gentleman came up to me and he said, "Have you heard of this artist, Denny Dent?" I said, "Nope, never heard of him." And literally brushed him off, got back to painting. He comes back. He's like, no, you should check this guy out. I'm like, cool, man. I'll do that. Go back to my painting. This guy, Kevin, gives me his card. He's like, hey, if you need help with a website, let me know. So thank God I kept his card. I called him and I was like, hey, man, I could use some help with my website. So we're at his place.
Still not thinking about Denny Dent.
I'm like, I forgot about Denny Dent. And then I go to his place and I see this painting on the wall and I'm like, is that the guy? He's like, that's the painting from Denny Dent, the artist I was telling you. And he explained how he created these paintings, these 6-foot portraits. He's like on stage, center stage.
Oh, so he was doing that sort of thing.
He was on center stage. He was the show. And at the time I'm like, I'm on the side. So now I'm putting in perspective how incredible that was. And he calls himself a rock and roll painter to give some, he did, and so eventually I looked him up and he was at the time doing it for 2 decades, actually
Really?
80s, 90s.
I've never heard of him.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I'm like on a mission to make sure people know who Denny Dent is because he started the performance painting style that I do now. There were some other
Similar,
people,
like with music and like a true performance?
Yeah, like the mechanics of it is painting to music, but that's very broad. I would say more specifically, he created an experience like he was the band.
Right.
And it wasn't cheesy. Like there were other painters that came after him that were like corporate entertainment.
Right.
It was a little cheesy.
Not like a rock concert.
I came from hip hop. I used to break dance. I was in graffiti. I'm like, this can't be cheesy. If I'm gonna do this, it's gotta be cool. Like we gotta move different. So Denny Dent inspired it, and but that day that I saw Denny Dent's painting, the day after I was in my dad's garage, trying to figure it out, practicing. Like I was this 20-year-old kid living back now with my dad because I couldn't afford rent, painting, and I'm just like trying to move like him. It looks funny and I think I'm doing well. And then my dad comes out. He's like, what are you doing?
Then jacked up my garage.
Exactly. Like this looks terrible. And I was doing so bad at it, but I still enjoyed it. And that's how I knew I was on the right track. So
I want to back up a little bit. You mentioned you came to a club not too far from here.
Yeah.
And you're painting off on the side. Like, how did that even occur? Did you approach the club owner? Like,
No.
How did that get started?
Yeah.
To even get to that point?
So I started painting in this little 1-bedroom apartment that I had in downtown.
By yourself,
So between 18 and 20, I was living in downtown. Like I was just kind of working odd jobs, working for my dad's warehouse. And I had done a few paintings, and there was a hip hop store down the street. They sold actually spray tips. I used to buy spray tips from. And I walked down there with my art under my arm, and I said, hey, do you have any room to display this? And the guy's like, this is pretty cool. He's like, you ever thought about doing it live? I was like, no, I really haven't thought about that. He's like, well, here's here's this place. It's called the Fox and Goose. Every Wednesday, this band does a thing called Urban Jazz Sessions. Ask for Anand. Tell him I sent you. It's like, all right. I don't know if Anand's expecting me or not, but I show up Wednesday with my canvas, my easel, my paints, and I'm like, are you Anand? He's like, yeah, who are you?
Was he expecting you?
No. And I said, I forgot the gentleman's name, but I said, so-and-so sent me down to paint with you guys. He's like, all right, go over there. So I just set up on the side. And now I played the trumpet, so I genuinely had an appreciation and love for jazz music. Right. And I was already creating similar figures like that. If you look at my early work, it was all urban jazz influence because that's what I love. That's who I am. And I mean, almost immediately I started painting live. And even though the paintings would take 30 minutes to an hour, which is still pretty fast, I still felt like there was a performance element.
And what was the response that you got in those early days at the Fox and Goose, like from the audience?
It was amazing.
Really?
I mean, I started selling art. The first painting I sold was to the DJ Anand. And I remember asking, he's like, so how much for this? I was like, oh, $300. He's like, I'll give you 100. I'm like, sold. Like, I just needed to start somewhere. So I started selling my paintings for $100, $200. Like, I would meet people. I'd meet them at the club, and then I'd meet them the next day at a coffee shop, selling the art out of my trunk. And I just started catching traction. So what's crazy too is the reason why I think I was able to start so fast was these collision of passions. Because everything I got into, I got deep into it. And so
it wasn't just something you were doing to get a check.
They were just like very passionate hobbies. Yeah. I just didn't know how they're going to come together like this. So art was the foundation, playing music and the musicality of learning that, and also dance in high school. So I was in this hip hop dance group in high school. And so the style was like the Jabberwocky style. Mm-hmm. And so it was a dance. So performing came natural. Yeah. I just didn't know that God was preparing me through each of these passions for this mission that I had no idea he was going to set me on.
But there was a lot of initiative in that story you just told. The one taking your art to the store down the street. Yeah. That's initiative on your part. You didn't know what they would say when you got there, and following up when people say goes. Like if somebody had told me when I was young, hey, just show up somewhere and tell them, hey, I'm looking for Anand, I probably wouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
But because it was your passion. Yeah. So how did it transition from a small, really well-known Fox and Goose's people, if you're from Sacramento, you know what the Fox and Goose is. And great food. To like on stage with Bocelli and all, like there's a big difference between the Fox and Goose and in an arena. Performing in front of thousands of people. And I've seen you in front of hundreds and hundreds of people at different functions on stage. Yeah. Like what took you from, somebody seeing you at the Fox and Goose selling the next day out of the trunk of your car to like performing in front of thousands of people?
I would always go back to this hustle mode, watching my parents get what they wanted. And Denny Dent had already set the bar of what could be done. So I already knew it was possible. Just seeing someone, that's why I always say, get a student with a mentor. If they can see that it's been done, there's just steps to get there, right? So I knew from doing a couple events around town that the event planners were the people hiring me. So I thought, well, if there's event planners here in Sacramento, there's got to be event planners all over the country. Mm-hmm. So I found out about this website where all the event planners list their information.
Wow. Another initiative.
So I went down that list, and every day I'd call a new one, cold call, like landline, pick it up, introduce myself.
I can only imagine what they're thinking. Who is this
I said, my name's David Garibaldi. I'm a performance painter. They're like, a what? And I would convince them, and they're like, well, send us your press kit. I'm like, sure, no problem. I go online. What is a press kit?
One of those.
And I make it. And then I had press kits, and I had these like special folders. So I started sending these out. And eventually over time, they started responding. So there was like this, what started off very slow, eventually built to this insane
And
momentum.
clearly that slow part didn't discourage you.
No, because I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the steps. I enjoyed the work. And I credit dance for that. When you want to learn a dance routine before you go in front of the audience, if you don't want to look like a fool, you do it over and over and over again. The repetition builds confidence. The confidence gives you the chance to go out there and give it a try, and then you learn how to improve it. So that really came from the dance aspect. But I was applying it now to my business. I'm like, how do you do this? But it took maybe 4 years, 4 years to build like real true momentum where it was like wildly successful. I was making a good living, but not like, I mean, by the time I was 25, I think that was my first, 25, 26, I was going on tour with Blue Man Group, opening up for them on an arena tour.
That seems to fit good.
It was a great fit. Yeah, no, they were awesome. They were awesome. But I just had my sights set on being a success. There was no other option. So
what at this time where you're now successful and your momentum's growing and you can actually see the fruits of a lot of your initiative and labor, I'm curious, what did your parents think at this point?
Oh man, my parents, I don't think they still can't believe it. Like I talked to my dad about it. I'm like, what were you thinking when I was in your garage painting and you come outside? He's like, I was worried about you. I just was counting down the days till you're going to go get a real job. But he would still encourage me.
Yeah,
and
he didn't tell you that at that time.
Yeah, he didn't tell me that, but he was thinking that. But I would have these small wins and I'd share it with him. And I think that as long as they saw me working, they kept encouraging me.
Yeah.
And we would celebrate those wins together. Like I got my first publishing deal where my posters are everywhere. And we'd celebrate that. He would drive me to San Francisco to take my paintings to my new publisher. And so they just thought and still think it's wild. Like when I tell my parents, I'm like, hey, I'm going to be going on tour with Kiss. They're like, what? You're supposed to be just showing in a gallery. You're opening up for this iconic rock band? I'm like, I know. It's crazy.
What was that like with Kiss? I mean, Kiss is one of those bands that, like, as you said, is iconic. Like, everybody knows.
Yeah.
Maybe not some 10-year-old today, but, like, in our generation, like, everybody knows what Kiss is. What was that like? It seems like Kiss is a pretty old band.
Yes.
And this seems a pretty new kind of thing, the two kind of things come together.
Yeah. Well, Kiss was going on their farewell tour. I think it was like their 10th farewell tour, but this was like literally this was it, and they had planned this, I mean, worldwide arena and stadium tour. And so about 2 weeks before it started, my agent called me and said, hey, Doc McGee's gonna call you. I said, cool. Who's Doc McGee? He's like, you don't know who Doc McGee is? It's like, please tell me. He's one of the most legendary
is he a hip hop guy?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, is he a rapper? He's one of the most legendary rock and roll managers of all time. And he manages Kiss, and he wants to talk to you about opening up for them. I said, well, why don't you talk to him? He's like, no, he's old school. He wants to talk to the artists. I said, cool. So I get this call, and Doc is on the other line, and we just start talking, and he's like, I really like your stuff. He's like, I want to present it to the guys, and I think it'd be really cool. And he's like, I know you're entertaining, but I think we could raise a lot of money with this concept of like, one of the paintings is of the guys, and we auction it off and do that. So, yeah, I think that'd be really cool.
How do you even know about you? Did he see you somewhere?
So someone in his office used to live in Sacramento, and he asked people in his office, like, hey, do you guys know anyone that is not a band but is a good performer? Maybe help us raise money. And they're like, I know this guy. He's a painter, and he raises a lot of money. I've seen him in Sacramento.
Wow.
I met that guy. I gave him a big hug.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And so within 2 weeks, we're at the first stop in Vancouver, Canada. And what was supposed to be only 10 days on just the first 10 shows turned into 120 plus shows around the world, all throughout Europe and North America.
Kid graffitiing the railroad tracks in Vintage Park is on stage with Kiss in Canada.
Man, Sullivan was really happy about that. And I told him, I was like, I'm going on tour with Kiss. He's like, I was a KISS Army member. Like he was part of the fan club.
He come to school with a star.
We got him front row seats, like front row 1, 2 seats right in front. We introduced him to the band. Like that was a really cool full circle moment. But yeah, we performed at Golden One Center.
Wow. So something in our country that was life-changing for the whole country and, sent people home and for years lasted was COVID. But COVID opened up a whole new world for you too. So talk a little bit about how COVID actually helped you think of new opportunities that are doing really well for you right now.
Yeah. Well, some perspective about when that started. In March 15th of 2020, I was on this self-perceived mountaintop. Well, this is pretty cool up here. There's a lot of momentum. We got the keys to this brand new, huge studio space. I couldn't wait to host people there and put on some live events. And then the world shuts down. And before I share what happened, being on that mountaintop, I don't know if you've ever climbed a mountain or gone hiking. You have to go back down.
Right.
That was the beginning of my journey back down.
There's nowhere, you can't go up anymore.
But really, starting the journey to go through that valley was just on my way to another mountaintop that I saw from where I was. Looking back on that, because it was rough after that. But
because you're thinking I'm gonna have people in this new space I have, and COVID just said no, you're not.
Yeah, we went from 100 plus shows a year to
and
0. And rent is due in 30 days. Which we paid for as long as we could, without any government assistance, which is a blessing because we got to work right away. And this new app, TikTok, had started.
Heard of it.
Yeah, and I had a good following on Instagram and other social, but we just started doing live streams with my phone in the new studio.
What made you even do that?
I think I just wanted to be in front of an audience. I was like, where are the people? What's the next best thing? Live streams, I can interact. I paint live. It's perfect for this format. So we started doing that 3 times a week. And then I would post the videos of what I painted the next day. I mean, within weeks, I started gaining hundreds of thousands of followers.
Wow. And
then we had one video that went up to over 98 million views on TikTok, and everything in between. We've had 25 million and so on. And then my following across platforms went to over 2 million followers. So I didn't know what to do with that. I'm just still waiting for shows to come back. Well, we had set up this studio now, kind of like a content creation space with cameras, lighting. And corporations started asking us to do virtual performances. So, imagine logging into a Zoom and we're like on a 3-camera performance for them. And then brands started coming to us, brands like Netflix, Cheetos, Monster Energy, Universal, all these people to create what we're already doing, but for them.
That helps their project, whatever it is they're doing.
Yeah. And so I had never gotten paid to do content until then. But once we figured out that there's this world, life has always been about taking these adversities and turning them into something special.
Absolutely.
This is no different. And we saw the opportunity and just started running with it. So on top of when the world came back, going back on tour, this new part of our business is creating art content for brands.
And it became a big percentage of what you do in addition to the performance and the going on tour and all that. Just out of some tragic thing, you're open to opportunities and bam, there it is.
Yeah, we were scraping by in the pandemic, but it helped us get by. And it helped us kind of keep the space and hold out hope that the world would open up. And it was never the same. And I would say the momentum that we had built on that to get to that mountaintop end of 2019, it's different now. It's not the same. It's just it's a different way to move and build. And a lot of it has to do with being open and being teachable to new technologies.
Yeah. So I'm always impressed with you in the sense that you're very successful, known. I mean, people know you from all over the place. And yet, I think, maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, I'm at Impact Sacks Student Voices, where they bring kids from all over our city to, hype them up, pump them up, get them excited, and then listen to them. Like, shocker of all shockers.
Yeah.
We don't do that very often. It's just, so they bring influential listeners in to listen to kids and high school kids, middle school kids to, if we want to know how to help high school kids, maybe we should talk to them. Maybe
Or listen to them.
As you've been doing today. And here you are on stage talking to these kids, like you're probably in some other country a week before or something like that. And here you are giving back to kids. You also have a program where you work with kids. Talk a little bit about what drives you to still give back, especially to youth, and about your Creator X program.
Yeah. Well, look, yes, we grow. Yes, life goes on. And yes, we become successful. But we're really just bigger versions of these kids that we used to be, right? You can't forget what it felt like to have a dream, to not have something, and to like just see enough and want to work for it, or you don't see it and someone says, hey, have you thought about this? And then opens you up and then something happens. That's what keeps me going.
I think that's how we lose kids. They lose their dream.
Yeah, that's how we lose adults.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, people that, there's this saying that artists are just like kids that never grew up or just fought on to their childhood. It's something similar to that, but like pursuing a dream is similar. And look, you could still run a business and feel like you're pursuing a dream still. But I never forget where this started. And I think the other part too is being an artist, you can't explain where this creativity comes from.
Right.
I just know the more I do it, the stronger I build in it, and the easier it comes, but it has to be developed. I still don't understand where it comes from. So as blessed as I am, why not share that with someone else, whether it's through donating time, art, or money? But it's because I don't forget where I came from.
Awesome. And your Creator X program, I think, enters a common figure you've talked about a lot. Talk a little bit about that program and who you collaborate with for that.
Yeah, so I founded Creator X with my high school animation teacher, Sean Sullivan, who changed my life. And what we've done is we've taken his teachings and the way that he teaches, and we've called on all of his former students and some of my friends from Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks, all working in the industry. And we invite them to Sacramento for a week. And we put on this free camp for students. And these students...
With all these people that are experts.
They're doing it. They're doing what we dreamed of. And we put this on for a week for students. And the students are from places like Twin Rivers School District.
Right.
From Grant High School and North Highlands and so on. And because these are highly creative kids without the direction or discipline yet. Yeah. So if we can open their eyes to career opportunities in arts, media, entertainment, then that's our ultimate goal with this. And I think too, connecting them with people who look like them, who are doing it. That's awesome. They're women of color, people who are, I'm mixed with everything. Everything but Asian. And so I want them to see themselves in that position. And that's what keeps driving us to, keep building us. And we've had great partners like Twin Rivers who has really helped us put that camp on a lot.
And that's in the summertime, right?
It is in the summer.
So if a young person, a student's listening to this and like, man, that's me. Yeah. That's what I need. How do they get connected to the camp? Do they go to the counselor, or can they go online, or like how would they get more information about that?
Yeah, so if they want more info about Creator X Camp, they can go to creatorx.org.
Okay.
Or you can DM me. I'll get you connected. I'll send you the link to actually sign up for it. And then I know for sure that if they're in the Twin Rivers School District, they'll actually bus the students in for it, which is incredible that they've set that up.
And where do you host the camp at?
We've been doing it at the Twin Rivers School District headquarters.
Oh, okay.
So they've got an incredible space there. I always perform and speak to close it out, but I'm also there throughout the week, just, checking in and making sure that the camp's running well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I want to thank you a lot for this. Your story is very inspirational, and I think a lot of people will get a lot out of it. If people want to follow you, I don't know if it's still on TikTok or what platform you're on. What are some of the ways people can follow you and kind of track what you're doing and all those sort of things?
Yeah. They can find at Garibaldi Arts across all platforms, from LinkedIn to Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or just search my name, David Garibaldi. Not the drummer.
I was going to say, there's a drummer
There's
out
a
there.
very famous drummer, same name. But just if you search David Garibaldi, all my stuff will come up. And, if you're listening to this wherever you are, and if something struck a good chord with you in this conversation, just send me a DM. Let me know. I respond to 99% of the DMs that come through. There's a 1% of negativity, but everything positive, I'll get on there and respond. So please don't hesitate to send me a message.
So if I'm convinced throughout my life that most people still, no matter how much we kind of get negative at times, I think most people in our country and in the world, for that matter, they really do actually care. They just half the time don't know how to help with whatever they're passionate about.
Yeah.
So if somebody's listening and they're like, man, I'd really love to help young people, chase their dreams, have dreams, believe that their dreams can, that they can live in their dreams. Maybe it's Creator X Camp. How can they help with what you're doing? How could they help maybe with Creator X Camp? Is there things that they can do to help the young people that you work with?
Yeah, well, I would say the most practical way to join our mission of helping students see careers in the arts or just get introduced to it, the most practical way is if you donate art supplies to a local elementary school teacher, or an art middle school teacher, or even high school. Giving those tools and supplies to them allows them to not only teach, but it gets it in the hands of the students, and that may wake something up in them. I know it did for me. I was lucky enough in my middle school to have art classes. And if it wasn't for that, the materials, again, each step matters, and that was some of the most important beginning ones. So if you want to help our mission, the most practical, commit once a year. Get some friends together, get some art supplies, go on your Facebook group, pick one teacher. Doesn't even have to be a big thing. Pick one teacher, gift them art supplies.
Awesome.
That's the most practical. The other, for Creator X, honestly, I would say just following the Creator X account is the biggest, because when opportunities come up, not only for joining the camp, but also career opportunities for students to join as well, or to shadow and be mentored by working animators or directors, even shadowing them on sets. Those opportunities come up as well. So if you follow that and share those opportunities, those are the most practical ways to help us on our mission. If you want to go deeper, DM me. We can get you plugged in.
Figure out some other ways.
But yeah, that's the most practical. And I would say, think about what has led you, if you're in a place of either influence or success, what were some of the biggest milestones, and pick one of those. What tools helped you in that moment? Get some of those tools, find someone who's in that similar milestone position right now, provide those. Just those tools alone, it can wake something up in a young student that, like me, misguided, but highly creative, lacked discipline. That teacher in that moment, it changed my life forever. And so you could be that. Think about that milestone in your life. Go there, provide those tools, pick one teacher. That's where you can start.
Well, hey, I think it's great that you shout out people like your parents and Mr. Sullivan, because it just is a reminder to all of us that we can change people's lives just by feeding into them and believing in them and supporting their dreams. Like those, I mean, you've mentioned them multiple times, those three people throughout this whole talk, and it changed your life. So I think that's a great example for all of us that we can do that for somebody else. So thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy man, and I love what you do, and I love the fact that you give back to young people to inspire them just the same way Mr. Sullivan inspired you.
No,
Appreciate
thank you. And thank you for doing this and telling these stories. I told you earlier, I know you couldn't imagine doing this at some point, but you're here now and you're doing an incredible job at it. So
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.